Starmer right now. He's being buffeted by a row over freebies and donations. Now, we know what he wants to talk about, his missions. That's what he campaigned on, of course, during that election campaign. But instead, now he's in office, well, he's spending his time having to deal with questions over how many Arsenal matches he's been gifted. And
it's unbelievable, isn't it? Only 4 months have passed, and Starmer has already managed to bury his reputation. This man has just taken up a post in Downing Street, and suddenly we are bombarded with shocking revelations about his luxurious and extravagant lifestyle, which simply make everyone's jaw drop. This is their first victory in 14 long years, after the Tories started making decisions that left us in a mess. And what does he do? He lives like he won the lottery, enjoying life to the fullest, while ordinary people like us wonder if we can afford to buy something.
Yeah, it's the same old Labour. It's that ideology that actually they know what's best for people. Whatever iteration of Labour it is, they believe that they know what's better and that they are going to clamp down on it. And it's wicked in a way, actually. It's amusing, but darkly so, that they've taken the Vote Leave sort of slogan about control and saying, but this is what you wanted. You voted for more control and we're giving it to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And from the arch Europhile, of course.
Well, you do fundamentally come back. We spoke to a Labour representative earlier about this. You fundamentally come back to this sort of battle between, what is the thing you value highest and what is the thing you value but don't value as high, and that's between liberty and equality.
Yeah.
And for Labour, it's equality, 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 even if it means everybody going down to a lower level.
Starmer certainly has many more surprises for the public, and they are simply shocking. The reports reveal the astounding number of gifts he received at a time when the entire country was suffering from record inflation and exorbitant taxes. And we are not talking about just a few £100s for a smart suit or fashionable glasses. This man does not hesitate to spend money on tickets to football matches and concerts, as if not noticing that millions of people are fighting for survival.
But if you care about liberty, my thing is liberty has to include the right to make bad choices, the right to do things that aren't good for you, maybe not good. Now, where they impinge on other people, so for instance, smoking. If you want to smoke cigarettes, I hate cigarettes. I think it's crazy to smoke cigarettes, but it's none of my sodding business unless you are doing it.
He even bought a 20,000 penthouse in Covent Garden. It's supposed to be nice, isn't it? While we ordinary people are struggling to choose between heating and food, Starmer is carelessly enjoying life in luxurious penthouses and private lodges. This is simply outrageous. How can you be so indifferent to the suffering of others?
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages.
He actually did say the return of the sausages when he meant the hostages. He quickly corrected himself. I don't know why we cut out the word hostages after that, but yeah, I mean, it's just, it's quite bizarre. That is such a weird slip of the tongue, especially when you've got an autocue.
Yeah, I felt a little bad for him because this is obviously his first keynote speech as Prime Minister, and it was perhaps the most delicate part of the speech, so to get it wrong.
These are people being held hostage.
You can sort of imagine, though, what he will have done is that in his mind he will have been trying to go, don't get it wrong, don't get it wrong. And of course, if you fixate too much, you end up getting it wrong. And, this is not necessarily a reflection on his capacity as somebody who can speak or make policy or anything like that. But my word, doesn't it just underpin how we were told 83 days ago that the grown-ups were back in charge? And it's the same litany of mishaps and bad policy that we had under the Tories. We're not being given the idea, the impression.
Let it really get to you. The £20,000 accommodation and the reason why he chose a luxury penthouse for a holiday are so absurd and outrageous that it is simply shocking. How can you be so detached from reality? It makes you reconsider everything you knew.
Some of that money was for the loan of a flat during the election period. No money changed hands.
Yes, and that was related to your son.
Yeah, there was no cash adjustment. We had a situation where the election was called, not when we expected it, I think most people. My son happened to be in the middle of his GCSEs. That means there are a lot of journalists outside the front door and in the street. I'm not complaining about that, but if you're 13, as my girl is, if you're 16, as my boy is, that's quite hard to navigate when you're concentrating on GCSEs. Now, hear me out, because you put it to me.
Yeah.
So I said, we're going to get you out of here and get you somewhere where you can just study and get to school and back without having to go through all of that. And that's when someone said, well, in which case I can make this flat available to you. It's safe, secure. He can get on with the job. No money exchanged hands. We didn't. No money exchanged hands. But for the registrar, no, but you've put it to me. Let me just finish. For the registrar's purposes, he says, well, I know you didn't pay and nobody gave you money, but let's work out what it would have been worth if it had been a commercial transaction, which it wasn't.
Let's reflect on this situation. Starmer rented a luxurious mansion for almost a month so that his son could serenely study for his GCSEs. This is simply outrageous and shocking. Either he is shamelessly using his position to enjoy the privileges of high life, or he is trying to cover up his true intentions with a pathetic excuse, jeopardizing his son's future.
So I'm not saying, of course I understand why you ask questions, etc. But I do think sometimes it's important just to sort of look behind the number and say, what was the human story behind some of this? And I wasn't going to let my son fail or not do well in his GCSEs because of journalists outside our front door. We also, as you know, had protesters outside our front door.
Do you find these questions hard?
Do I find protesters outside my front door when our children are in there worrying? Yes, I absolutely do. Do I want my son doing his GCSEs walking through journalists and protesters? No, I don't. I promised him, my wife and I promised our children would protect them.
In any case, it looks extremely unattractive and makes him a real laughingstock. And as if that wasn't enough, the scandal broke out in the Cayman Islands, which is ready to blow his reputation to smithereens in an instant, like a time bomb. How can you be so careless?
Sir Keir Starmer has won a loveless landslide. Labour's vote share in England basically stayed the same since the last election. He won fewer votes than Corbyn won in 2017. They won 2/3 of seats with only 1/3 of the vote. Starmer's majority in his own seat was down significantly from 22,766 in 2019 to 11,572. Well, look, good luck, Sir Keir, and with this lot around him, he's going to need it. Our new Home Secretary, yes, has posed with a sign saying refugees welcome, just as we're about to experience a huge wave of illegal immigration from across the Channel. Our Foreign Secretary is a genius.
Who acceded to the English throne at the age of 9 on the death of his father Henry VIII in 1547?
Henry VII.
Edward VI.
Who has also gone around basically calling people Nazis.
Implication, you're comparing the ERG to the Nazi party, or at least to the South African racists. Now, whatever you think about the ERG, that was an unacceptable comparison, wasn't it?
Andrew, I would say that wasn't strong enough.
But, wait a minute. Didn't Starmer shout at every corner that he would act absolutely honestly and without any doubts before the election? How could he forget his own words so easily?
I came into politics to serve, to get things done, to strive each and every day to make a difference to the lives of working people.
Are these the changes he has been so vocal about? Starmer has returned to the same dirty practices that he swore to abandon as soon as he took office. Have you forgotten how confidently he stood on the podium and swore that he would no longer deal with dubious companies? And now we are watching this convoluted scheme with a hedge fund worth £4 million, which evokes painful memories of how the British were deceived by this self-satisfied liar. Didn't everyone around warn him about his double standards and hypocrisy regarding these scandals? How could he forget his promises so easily?
And he's received a lot. Look at this, £107,000. In fact, even more than that. That's the total gifts and hospitality he has registered since the start of the last Parliament. Holidays, theatre, music, football tickets, hotel stays, all within the rules, Downing Street says. But now look at this from our spreadsheets. Compared to every other current MP, Keir Starmer comes top of the charts. He has accepted more freebies by far than anyone else, 2.5 times more than the second highest claimer of freebies. Now, what this table here is the top 10 MPs who've accepted the most in gifts, excluding legal fees. Now, you might remember in his election victory speech, Keir Starmer promised a government of service.
This is just a shocking moment in this whole story. How can Starmer justify his insanely luxurious life when he ranks first in the number of free gifts and donations from people like Lord Ali? Is donations of 107,000 sterling normal for a person who, from the very beginning of his reign, does not get tired of talking about the country's catastrophic budget deficit of £22 billion? How can he, with an arrogant smile, cut the winter fuel allowance for more than 1.6 million pensioners while he himself lives at the top of luxury? Journalists do not miss the opportunity to point out his blatant hypocrisy. After the scandal with a hedge fund worth up to £4 million, he still sits and talks about the mandate, and he really doesn't have a drop of shame. Unsurprisingly, the hatred of Keir Starmer has reached a peak in recent months, and he has found himself on the edge of the abyss, becoming one of the most unpopular prime ministers in British history in just 4 months. If he does not take urgent measures to remedy the situation, he risks facing civil unrest and possibly even resignation, which will be a real shame for both his party and himself. What do you think about this video? Write your thoughts in the comments. See you soon.